This spelling test by itself will tell you what sounds and patterns the child knows, but it will not tell you if the child is able to effectively use that knowledge in the process of reading. Most struggling readers cannot, so you will need to take this test in conjunction with the decoding test, which is very quick to administer. The aim here is to discover how the child perceives the sounds in these words. Tell the child before you begin that you are not going to mark it, that these are uncommon words and you just want to see how the child thinks the words could be spelt. Tell the child that you are going to write the word down as the child spelt it here in this column. And if you are working with one child and filling this in as you go through the test, then write in all the words, correct or incorrect. Never tell the child whether or not they have got the word correct. Do not put the word in a sentence. You are gathering information about the child's perception of the sounds in words, and this clue could distort the result. But if the child asks you to, repeat the word. Say the word as clearly as you can. For words with the, th, and th, sounds that are especially difficult to distinguish, ask the child to watch you say it. See how you are making that sound. Let them see teeth on bottom lip for the, and so on. Write the letters and the word exactly as the child did. If this B is backwards, write this word backwards. Write it backwards like that. If the child crosses out a first attempt and does something else, cross it out and put in what the child put in. If the child has written something for 3 sounds here down to here, there is a beginning, a middle and an end sound, right or wrong like this, carry on. For kids who cannot do this, stop here. You have more than enough to work on. For the rest, try to get to the end of this page. If there are 2 kinds of errors, more than one vowel confusion, or a problem distinguishing between b and p, or d and t, or f and v and th, or the child does not recognize both sounds in these initial blends, or does not know how to represent this ch sound, stop here. This is what you're likely to see. Many children will put th here because the word looks familiar. Some kids will add an e here because hide is a more familiar word than hid. Mop, doesn't look long enough, I'll add an e. Many children do this. Capital B, capital D, because they cannot distinguish between lowercase b and d, and because the A is in there, as most struggling readers use A for the sound. So those are the basic 3-letter words. If a child can do that or can't do that, that's the place to stop. Now, many children do not know that digraph and are likely to put in something like that. This is a very common way of spelling this word. Confusing the f and the th, A for the sound again, knows that it's a D, but never sure which is B and D, so let's use a capital. Same thing here. Some kids put CAP, some kids put HAP, some kids put SHAP. Moth, mostly spelt like that. Now this one, many kids will leave that P out. They just don't distinguish between S and SP. So you get this. But then other kids will hear that P, but then look for something that looks familiar and put 2 E's in there. And here, leaving out the N is very common. Many of them actually put an E in there so that you know that that EI distinction which they got up here, well you can see the confusion there, is far from secure. For often written like this. Prod, Maybe we'll put the R in this time. And there's that capital D again. Much the most common way to spell this word for struggling readers is like that. Sometimes like this, sometimes with a capital there. You can see what's happening here. Right. Too many errors there to be bothered going any further. So now I'm going to analyse where it has gone wrong. I can see that there's a problem here with the B and D. I can see that there's a problem there with the V and Th. So I'm just circling the part of the word that is wrong. I'm going to circle this because it's far from secure. And knowing the difference between O and E, I'm going to put a question mark there. Okay, we've got this BD confusion here, and we've got this problem. We've got the there, but we haven't got the sh. Here again, we haven't got that, we haven't got that, and we can see that BD confusion coming in here. So the ch is the problem here. The th is the problem here, and hearing both sounds in that blend. And you can see that even though he knows it's an sound, knowing the difference between and E is a difficulty. Here again, that and confusion, and not hearing both sounds in the blend. Not hearing both sounds in the blend. Got it there, but here we've got that BD confusion coming in again because we've got that capital D to escape the problem. Same thing here. But as well as that, the child that makes this P here is not hearing the difference between B and P. And then there's that sound, and they haven't heard both sounds in that cl blend. Here, got it all except for that CK. Here, that and problem again, that getting that B right, and hearing both sounds in there. And this tr. So straight away, I can look down and see what it is I have to work on. The difference between and the difference between and and the difference between V and F and Th. That comes up several times here, and those aspirated and unaspirated sounds are a problem. And of course, hearing both sounds in the initial blends, knowing how to represent sh and ch and k is also a problem. Plenty to work on there. And if the child is making multiple errors at this point, more than two, more than one vowel confusion, or a problem distinguishing between b and p or d and t, or the child does not recognize both sounds in the blends, or does not how to represent the ch sound here, stop here and go to word chain 1. But if the child has mostly got all that right, perhaps just confused the a and the sound, maybe missed the CK, but otherwise it's okay. Let's move over to here and let's see what the sorts of difficulties the child is likely to make here. Many children, that dr is a difficult blend. Many children will put down something like that. And the most common error for hung is this, H-A-I-N-G. Confusing the a and the and not knowing ng is a separate phoneme from the common ing. Then a lot of kids here will put down this, even though over here they got the and the correct. Same here. Many children will put down l, e, d or l, e, d, but more often l, e, d, not distinguishing the difference between lend and lead. Same here. Very common. Many children add an e here just to make it look right. And many children spell link like that or like this. Very common to spell this one like this. And now we're getting into these complicated endings. Not complicated, but complicated for these kids. duffer. Many will do that. And many kids who had no trouble with IST in here, because there's more to think about here, will lose it. Or maybe the S in there instead of the T. Much the most common way to misspell crushed is like this. Tricky, much the most common way to misspell it is like this. Bungle, now this is a tricky one. We've got that A and A to confuse. We've got that NG, which we may or may not know, often just goes down as a G, and that all ending. What are we going to do with that? OL, blankly. And now you can see here there's quite a lot more to think about. And children who got the initial blends here on the first page will often lose them here. So here we might get Lee, all E, plucked. A lot of kids will spell it like this. Clanger, maybe like that. G or J there. Very common spelling of clumpy is like that, with or without that M. Sliver, strutted. So let's have a look at what's going on here. That dr is a problem. Here we've got that A and A confusion and this problem with this NG. This I and E is a problem here. And hearing that N and that M and that, in this case, that Ng, and here that Ng is a problem. And that A. Duffer, you can see the A sound there, A for the A sound, and A for the A sound over here as well. Duff, A. Here you can see that the ist blend that the child may have got up here is going to pieces because there's too much else to think about. Here we've got that A and A problem again. Here's a T on the end of the word and puts down that T. Tricky, doesn't know that CK. Here's E and puts down an E. Bungle, A and A, not hearing that NG sound, doesn't know that all. Here we're starting to lose the blends, even though with the simpler words they may have been getting them. Not getting that one. Lee, all E, makes sense. Plucked, not hearing that K because it is actually quite hard to hear. Plucked. Hearing that T and not hearing that. Clanger, got it mostly right. It's just this ending, which this child is hearing as an A and writes it down as an A. Missing that N in there and writing Lee again as a Y. Clumpy, that A problem, E problem. Sliver, the th is a problem there and the is a problem there. And here they're not hearing that sound in that triple blend, and they're not hearing, they've heard this, but they don't know how to express it. So, these sorts of problems are all addressed in word chain 2. Some of these simple endings, ing, id, and e, come into word chain 1, but much more comprehensively in word chain 2. So if these were they're sufficiently covered in word chain 2 that you do not need to go over them in word chain 1 if all the rest was fine.